Good afternoon, everyone. You're all very welcome along. For those that don't know me, my name's Stephen Kelly. I'm Chief Executive of Manufacturing Northern Ireland. You're all very welcome along this afternoon to our Sustainable Engineering Solutions session alongside partners of Manufacturing Northern Ireland, Reliance. I'm very pleased to welcome Peter Crichton, who's the Managing Director of Reliance, and Pat Walsh, who's the Engineering Manager with Reliance, to take us through our session today. A bit of context to this: on Friday of last week, I was with the utility regulator, and they outlined to the energy industry and representatives on behalf of energy consumers what is going to happen to your energy bills come the 1st of October of this year, relating specifically to the wires, the kind of network elements of your electricity bill. And I'm sad to say there's some very bad news for consumers in that there's huge rises forecast. In fact, they've already approved the spend on the All Island electricity market, which will mean that certainly those network elements of your bill will be rising quite significantly in the year ahead. For instance, there's a charge on your electricity bill called impairment, and it's basically where the energy's been generated, but it can't get to consumers. That impairment cost will rise to more than 800 million euros on the island. And that impairment cost alone equates to probably about 15% of the final delivered bill for consumers now. There's additional costs in terms of the network, in terms of the investment that's going in to drive decarbonisation and the ambition for net zero, both north and south of the border. And this is a trend that we're going to see continuing for a number of years ahead as the governments have permitted and regulators have permitted our energy firms to invest more in the wires that will carry the electricity around the country. So regardless of what happens with the commodity price, the actual electricity price itself that's generated, all those additional costs that are there on your bill will be rising from the 1st of October and likely for years beyond that as well. So that's the kind of context that today's session's in. For many manufacturers, electricity represents either the second, but mostly the third most expensive bill that they have within their business after their supply chain and their wage bill. Energy represents a huge part of what manufacturers have to spend each month and every month in order to produce the goods that they have to solve solutions for customers here and across the globe. So with such a large cost, it's really important that we're as efficient as possible, really important that we drive down those energy bills, because the reality seems to be that we're in an era now where electricity bills in particular are going to become just more expensive year on year. So in that context, it's really important that we actually try to be as efficient as we can within our business, and look at those easy wins that are existing, stuff that's happening within your factories that you can tackle, sometimes with no, and certainly with some small investments that have decent returns, in order to both reduce the cost of your final build because you're using less energy itself, but also in a world where manufacturers and others are being asked to report on their CO2 emissions, will help drive those CO2 emissions down so that your customers and their consumers know that you're making your effort towards that net zero target. As I said, I'm joined by Peter Crichton, who's the Managing Director of Reliance, and he'll kick us off in a second, and Pat Walsh, who will take us through some of the solutions that they've been introducing into businesses across this island in order to save them some money. And we've got some practical examples of what those cost savings could be. For information, Pat's an engineering manager. He's an engineer by trade, and he's had almost 50 years, 47 years in total of engineering experience. And Peter and the Reliance business have been working in this place for quite some time now as well. So I'll hand over to yourself, Peter. You can introduce the company, introduce your background and experience, and then we'll hand over to Pat later in the session. If people do have questions, do use the Q&A and do use the question function that we have, or the chat function that we have within Microsoft Teams. we'll put some questions at the end of the presentations to Peter and Pat. The recording will be shared after the event, as will the slides, so you don't need to be busily scrambling away to find a pen and try to take some notes. We'll be sharing all of this after the event on our usual e-signs. Peter, great to have you with us, and we'll hand over to yourself.
Thank you, Stephen, and good afternoon, everyone. I would just like to start at the presentation to give a brief overview as to who Reliance is, what our presence is on the island, and really, what we do on a daily basis. So I won't go into the details of our long history, but we are celebrating our 100th year in business this year. And the business was started off by my great-grandfather, 1925. And he started selling engineering components like bearings and related from the back of a Model T truck. And to this day, we are still very much involved in the distribution of engineering components and related products. And we've built a strong presence within manufacturing on the island of Ireland, basically by supplying those products, but also by supporting all of the technologies through various different services, and us specializing in various different areas. And today we are 5 locations, with our Northern Ireland location located just off the Dunsilley roundabout there on the M2, right opposite where Harley Davidson Belfast is located in Antrim. And we've the largest stockholding in the country of day-to-day engineering components that manufacturing require in order to operate. Through the years, we have specialized in various different areas, and apart from sustainability, which is what we're going to talk today about, we are very focused on future tech as well. And we have a separate business within Reliance called Reliance Automation. And I'll talk to you about that in a second. So one of our biggest aims whenever we're dealing with any manufacturer is really how we try and add value. And the way we add value is not by just supplying components. The way we add value is how we support the technologies. And it's not just our technical know-how, it's also essentially, things like 24/7, having in-house engineers as part of our offer, so that we're very much self-reliant when it comes to solving problems very quickly anytime. So I mentioned about the products. Here's just a kind of a snapshot of some of the products that we would sell on a daily basis, and Pat is going to be talking about some of these today, in fact, because the various different global manufacturers all have sustainability and all have how they can provide efficiency and improved reliability with the aim of helping manufacturers reduce their carbon footprint. So what you see on your screen there isn't limited to what we do. It's just a broad kind of range of components that we would specialize in. In addition to that, when it comes to automation and robotics, we would be the largest provider of automation hardware technologies. In addition to that, we have a facility in Dundalk that assembles solutions and will install and certify solutions on site. So if you have a process that you would like to automate, a very good starting point is really to touch base with us, show us what it is you'd like to do, and we can basically take it from there and show you on visuals what it would look like. And of course, this does lead into sustainability as well. So when it comes to sustainability, most of you might be familiar with a company called Carbon Fit, and we would be very related to what Carbon Fit would offer. So essentially, Carbon Fit will look at your business and look at it quite holistically in terms of, you know, what refrigeration you're using, the age of some of the fridges you might have, or other technologies or machines that you have, and look at your energy and what have you. Okay, and you know, they look at it from a very broad perspective. When it comes to manufacturing, where Reliance comes in is more so looking at your applications and doing a deeper dive. So basically, within your manufacturing environments, you'll have AHUs, you'll have pump applications. We would typically look at applications like those and more, and look at basically the design of the drive, or look at the technology that's being used. And we would have the engineering capability to see essentially what would be easy, low-hanging fruit improvements that typically don't take a huge amount of investment and will give extraordinarily fast return on your investment. And most importantly, it's quantifiable. So when it comes to reporting, it really does add to your environmental and sustainability strategy going forward. So with that, I'm going to hand you over to Pat, who's going to talk to you about some of the technologies that we would specialize in. And it's not limited, because, you know, we don't want to put everyone to sleep either, but we're just going to talk about a couple of the technologies that would be very prevalent and would be, you know, quite easy to implement. So over to you, Pat.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for taking the time to listen to us today. What I'm going to just start with is I'm going to just have a quick run over global electricity consumption and what we as a country and as employers do to improve our consumption. So, worldwide, standby is use 3% of all electricity used worldwide. Nothing much you can actually really do about that. We then move on to electrolysis, which is something nobody can do anything about either. And then we move to the bigger users and we go to electronics. And not a huge amount can be done with that either, because electronics is massive. Then we come to where we can actually have improvements. So believe it or not, 19% of all the electricity in the world is used on lighting. And everybody does their utmost to improve their lighting consumption and use low wattage bulbs, etc. And they do their best. Then we come to heat, which comes in exactly at 19% as well. And like that, everybody controls their heat and they watch the times it's on and they regulate it and they do their best. And there's only so much you can do. Then comes motors. And the frightening part is 46% of all the electricity used in the world is actually used in running motors. A lot of people try to do it, try to make improvements, but motors are where your carbon footprint is caused big time. So your emissions that come from motors are absolutely huge. And anything that I can offer anybody to help reduce their carbon emissions and to help reduce their electricity consumption is well met. So I'm going to go through the two biggest users of electricity in manufacturing. The first one would be a compressor. So anybody who has pneumatic air in situ all know that the motor in their compressor is by far the largest single standing motor that they would have in the facility, which is grand when you have a 200 kilowatt motor. And you find that a 200 kilowatt motor is 85% inefficient. What that means is that when you're generating your air, the cost of running your motor, by the time you get air out onto the production facility, you only get 15% of the value that was put in first day. That's frightening enough in itself, costs absolutely massive money. But then when it does go in onto the facility, we find that you only get 50% of the 15%. Due to leaks and inappropriate uses and artificial demands. Now, all of a sudden, that is 7.5% efficient. So if you're running a motor that's 200 kilowatts and it's costing you, just say, 10 cents an hour or 10 pence an hour, you look at that and all of a sudden you're getting 7.5% back. It's a massive, massive draw on your consumption. as it shows here, the Department of the Environment in the States actually reckon that 10% of all electricity generated in the United States, which would be replicated around the world, is actually used on compressors. So what can you do to improve your compressor? Well, first of all, and the best is actually look for air leaks. Very important that you look for air leaks, and it's very important that you look for non-audible air leaks as well. Because a non-audible air leak is exactly what it says. It is an air leak that you can't hear when you're next to it, but a non-audible air leak on a small tube can cost you up to 500 sterling a year just to feed. So that is where you can save on your compressors. Other than that, there's not much more you can do. Just make sure that your leaks are good. And a lot of people nowadays are actually using their heat loss and pipe it back, and they're actually heating offices and other parts of the plant. No, that's the biggest motor. But when we go to the biggest user, they're air handling units. And air handling units are really inefficient. And they're inefficient because they're not set up properly. Nowadays, people spend a bit more time, but still, how would I put this nicely? An air handling unit, okay, has a motor running, and it should not be running at 50 hertz, first of all. So it should be controlled by an inverter. The inverter should be controlled by a PNID loop, which is actually watching your airflow, etc., and all coming back, and in such reducing the hertz. So very important that you have a proper inverter, and your inverter can actually take the signals back in to in turn reduce the hertz burning your motor to ensure that you get the same flow of air all the time. Type of inverter we use is OptiDrive, so that's why I have OptiDrive used here. It's got a number of things like reduced harmonics, higher input power factor, which is a very, very important thing because that gives you the ratio of kilowatt power to your killiamps. Very efficient, will run all motors that are out there now at the moment, so improve performance, and it can do pump control as well. And if you use that then in conjunction with red power belts, and people say, why choose a red power belt? A red power belt is a maintenance-free, non-stretch belt. So it means that within the 3 years lifetime of a belt, when it's set up correctly, there is no maintenance required. So you never have to retension the belt, and by not retensioning the belt, you transmit more of your kilowatt power. So to put it in context, the standard belt needs to be tensioned 10 times within 3 years. If it's not tensioned 10 times within 3 years, it will transmit maybe 78 to 80% of your kilowatt power. So that means that you're losing 20% of the kilowatt power of the motor due to slippage. And the slippage between the belts and the pulleys are what causes that. The red power belt are set up exactly as here, and I don't need to go through it too much. Meets all the ISO requirements. It'll run from a very good temperature range from 40 degrees to 212 degrees, and it can transmit up to 70 or 97% efficiency. Setting up is very important. There is kits that you can buy off us, or there's kits that you buy off anybody else. So it's not just Reliance, but we would recommend that you actually set them up properly. You do correct alignment, correct tensioning. This is the benefit of the alignment. So if you align your pulleys correctly and your belts are running correctly, the lifetime of your belt is greatly extended because of the fact that it's lying exactly level on both sides of the groove at all times. Here's our tension kit. And how the tension kit works is it's just harmonics. You strum the belt, and it's like tuning guitar. It'll take the reading back and it'll tell you which is right and which is not. V-belts. So I'm going to talk a small little bit about V-belts and the benefit of V-belts, and what people think of a V-belt is they think it's a consumable. So the design life of a good quality V-belt is 25,000 hours, as I said, 3 years, 24/7. Typically, 30% of the drives only achieve 20% of potential life, and that is down to two things. One is misalignment, which I was on about your pulleys being aligned correctly, and the other is incorrect tension. 70% of drives, even though you put a lot of time into it, they still achieve less than 50% of potential. And that is down to the fact that you can align them properly and tension them properly day one. But if it's not a certain type of belt and you don't go back to open your AHU every 3 months, which people don't like doing, you start losing efficiency. Therefore, significant improvements are possible. And the Opti Red Power V-belt can do that. And it can bring you from, as I said, 80% up to 97% efficiency. Typically, most V-belts only run at 92% or as low as 82%, depending on the make. And depending on the make will be to do with what's called set constant. So if you have 4 belts on a drive and they want what we call set constant, you can never ever tension all 4 belts to exactly the same. So 2 will drive, 2 will flap, and you just can't do anything about that. But all of the Opti belts are set constant. So if you look at how many kilowatt hours are transmitted by V-belts across your site, so that is looking at all your air handling units with your supply and your return. And typically, everywhere I go into that's in larger manufacturing, they would have a couple of 100 kilowatts because they would have 37.5, 45 kilowatt supplies. They would have 22 kilowatt and 18.5 kilowatt returns. You start adding all them up together and then you say, oh my God. So just purely by setting up a V-belt correctly, you will achieve at least 5%, at least. And why I say at least is because I'm never ever promising anyone that they get more than 5, but everybody does in your energy cost. So big change of perception. Everybody must realize that V-belts are an asset. They're not a consumable. They're an asset because a V-belt on its own set up correctly in conjunction with an inverter can save you a hell of a lot of money and really, really reduce your carbon emissions. A couple of things you need to do when you're setting up your V-belts. You need to actually check that your pulleys are correctly aligned and not worn. And the rule of thumb is that every third belt that you put on, you change your pulleys. People don't do it, and you will not have efficient drives if you don't. So, live applications. I was with a customer recently. They had a 22 kilowatt drive, which is a 22 kilowatt motor. Their cost, because I was in Southern Ireland, was 25 cents an hour they were paying. They were running 24 hours a day, 6 days a week, for 50 weeks of the year. I said, if you put on an inverter, which you had to do, and you put on your belts, which they'll all come to approximately 2,000 euros, and allow for 1,000 euros for installation costs, which is fairly excessive, but it can happen. The payback on these was, but here's what we're at first day. We're using 40,392 euros worth of electricity to run that one motor for the times. It's only a 22 kilowatt motor. It's frightening, but it's the truth. And it emits 69 tons of CO2. So we put on the inverter without doing the belts. The inverter immediately will actually read the airflow and cut down the airflow to where it needs to be. And we will drop down to 32,718 euros and reduce our carbon emission to 56 tons, saving us 11 tons. And saving us in electricity, the average of 541 euros a month. So the payback for that investment is 6 months. And this is all quantifiable. We add on the red power belts and we get another 5% in efficiency. Then all of a sudden, we're down to 44 tons of CO2. We're saving 21 tons in total. Our energy cost has gone down to 12,419 euros for the year. We're saving 1,035 a month, and we pay back for that installation in 3 months. I then looked at the second drive that they wanted me to look at, and it was a 75 kilowatt unit, yet again, an old machine with no inverter, direct online, and these are the hours it was running. Similar, 75 kilowatts, 25 cents. The new Opti drive and belts and pulleys for this drive, because it was bigger, was 10,000 euros. It's still only the same installation cost because you're still only doing the same type of job. The hours match, 24, 6 days a week, 50 weeks a year. So we looked at the original cost of running that, and the original cost of running that motor was 137,700 euros. And it was emitting 237 tons of CO2. So what we done is we looked at putting on the inverter first, and the inverter gave a saving straight away of 38 tons, gave an electricity saving of 1,843 euros. And we were now down to a running cost of 111,537 euros with a 6-month payback just for putting on an inverter. We then done the belts. So on this drive yet again, with the belts on, we're now saving 73 tons of carbon, but we're also saving 42,336 euros with a payback of 3 months. And these are low-hanging fruits. So none of these are CapEx projects, none of them. Quantifiable. So if I go into one of your facilities, we look at what you have, I show you what it's costing you now, I show you what it'll cost you later, and these are quantifiable and acceptable as proof of your carbon emissions. So you can see on one of them, it shows quite clearly that we are saving approximately 1 ton per month. And why it says 1 ton is it doesn't go up to 2 and you get to 24, but you're actually saving 21 ton a year. And on the second one, we're saving 6 tons per month, 73 tons in total. None of these costing anything where you'd have to sit down and go for finance. All these are more than approachable. So to finish off, what we offer is we offer a free energy audit. So a free energy audit doesn't mean I have to go to site. It means that you come to me with anything that you have with all your applications, and I will come back and say to you, well, here we go. If we do A, B, C, D, and E, we can get rid of trapping your unused energy. We can make it more efficient. We can improve your equipment performance because it's actually all set up properly. Regulatory compliances that we will actually greatly reduce your CO2. And quality area will be a lot better because it'll be the same all the time. So if you want 1,000 cubic liters of air a minute, you'll always get 1,000 cubic liters. Fewer breakdowns and reduced maintenance. Fewer breakdowns is these belts don't really crack once you set them up properly. They last 3 years. Reduced maintenance means that you don't have to go in every 3 months, open up your air handling unit and go in and retention. So, and avoid penalties as well, okay, for emitting too much CO2. So I think, for something that we looked at that doesn't have a great cost, I hope it's of interest to you. And that is the end of what I have to do now. So we're going to hand you back over. Thank you very much.
Pat and Peter, thanks very much for that. It's extraordinary how relatively small, simple interventions can actually have quite a significant impact. I mean, to have payback on the capital in 3 months is unheard of in some respects. But more importantly, the money that's been saved beyond that point in the business is huge. I mean, we have an energy industry running at about 6 billion euros in total across the island. And from your presentation, we find out that a big chunk of that energy, we might as well just be burning £10 or €10 notes because it's just been completely and utterly wasted. With something that's so simple, in your experience, Peter and Pat, why have they been slow in actually looking at these types of solutions?
I would suppose realistically because, people were making a lot of money. Companies were making massive money, okay? And they didn't really want to go to the issues of stopping something to replace it. But nowadays, because first of all, to get skilled labor is so hard. Now, this is a big factor as well that no one looks into. So when the labor isn't there to actually do the skilled work, you need to make everything work a little better, work a little longer. So, I mean, maintenance is a big part of this as well. So it's the cost of the maintenance and the cost of not having someone there and the cost of a breakdown. So when we put the whole lot together, and then in the last number of years, carbon, as you know, has only become a buzzword. They started looking at it then. So the first application I would have done with a very, very large multinational would have been, I would reckon, around 2009 or 2010. And the buzzword started then. And this now is a daily part of my routine, talking to people on this. So now it is here, you know. But a lot of people say, sure, we're grand, you know, it's only a compressor. We're grand, it's only an air handling unit. It's actually not, it's when you quantify everything put together.
Just to add to that, when we first started our sustainability awareness campaign, which was before 2010, it was around 2008, 2009, wasn't it?
Yeah, about that.
A lot of the engineers that we were talking with thought this was fantastic, really loved it, but it would then go to the accountancy department for sign off, and back then accountants weren't in the humor to sign off on a project like this, whereas nowadays the landscape has totally changed, and companies today have targets that they need to reach in terms of cost reduction and improved efficiency. And the technologies that we're talking about today is just part of what can be done, even as basic as looking at what electric motors you have and to see what efficiency they are. Because if you have an old electric motor on site that's not kind of an efficiency that is there in a new motor that's off the shelf today, it actually would make commercial sense to swap it out for a new motor because it'll pay for itself within a year or two. And a lot of engineers don't realize that,
I mean, if there was somebody to take an engineering business, we're very strong at that. I led engineering in Northern Ireland. Take an engineering business, if there was someone on the shop floor just busily chopping up bits of metal and being really inefficient with their, say, the length, and they were chopping it in the middle, and you were throwing half of it away, etc., etc., etc. Those people wouldn't be long in the business. They'd be, as a minimum, they'd be trained, but more likely they'd be out. So to kind of see, we need people to see their energy supply, their energy costs in the same ways they would do any other raw material that goes into the production, and they find whatever efficiencies and savings that can be found there in order to be as productive as they possibly can. And alongside that, they're obviously then reducing their CO2 as well. I mean, in terms of this type of solution, I'm assuming this can be retrofitted to any type of machinery, any kind of brand or model. I mean, is this technology agnostic? Is this brand agnostic in
No.
terms of where this stuff can be fitted, or does it need to be alongside certain pieces of infrastructure?
No. So anybody's inverter will actually do, but yet again, we don't use anybody's inverter because we've actually picked Invertech because it actually is very, very good, and the results that we're getting from Invertech is absolutely superb. And when it comes to the belting, it has to be OptiBelt, because OptiBelt are the #1 in the world at what they do with maintenance-free belts, and they have to be maintenance-free belt to make this work.
But the belts will fit on any standard pulley.
That's what I mean. It's about it doesn't matter what they're fitted to.
Yeah.
The technology agnostic on that side. This is technology. Do you recommend they sit alongside it?
Well, you see, I'd be a little bit different. I would agree with you. They could, but I disagree because it's such a small cost to change the pulleys as well. You set up correctly first day.
Yeah.
But just if you don't want to go to and I've had people who didn't want to change the pulleys, and we have changed the belts, and but we may not show as good a saving. We may show 7%. But no, we still show a saving. But if they paid the extra £100 and changed the pulleys, they would have their 10 or 12%.
Sure.
So it's not going to be a massive difference as such. But no, you don't need. It can fit onto any machine as such. Any machine that you can control the speed of what you're turning. So realistically, what you're doing is you're controlling the speed of a fan. The speed of the fan determines the amount of air that you get. Right? So a lot of people would have just plugged in the blow air out and it's gone out into the atmosphere, and they don't need that amount of air going out. Yeah. So nowadays, they measure the flow of air, and by measuring the flow of air, it'll actually turn your inverter down. And the inverter will keep trying to turn itself down as well as it's going. And then until it gets down to the minimum, where below that it can't control the air to the flow required. So yeah, like we've only looked at a maximum of 10% saving on anything that's there. Realistically, in the real world, it's greater. But that is the surprise for the employer and the owners of the companies to spot themselves, you know. So
Sure.
I only say 10%, but 10% is, I can guarantee 10%.
And Peter, the business is in Northern Ireland, which is great, and it's a good investment here for us. And you've been working here now for the last couple of years. I mean, what are the kind of big kind of cultural differences that you see north and south? Obviously, you're working with some of the world's largest multinationals as well as SMEs in Ireland. We're still largely an SME based economy here. What are the big kind of cultural differences, and what's the kind of shift that's required from that SME community to really become as productive and as focused on driving efficiency in the north?
That's a tough question.
I'm not leaving until you answer it.
There isn't a huge amount of difference between the north and south when it comes to companies looking at introducing efficiency and wanting to improve reliability and all of those good things. What I would say is that the north actually has, in our experience, more of an appetite to digitalize and to kind of progress forward a bit more than down south. So you have a feather in your cap up there, even though you mightn't think it. The desire to actually, make the manufacturing environments as best as they can be is there, because the pressure is on at the moment, most definitely. And I think the north has quite an opportunity, really, because your tariff structure and your trade and agreements are different to down south. So the opportunity up there to actually maximize on that is very good. So the desire with the companies is much the same, but I think the north has the opportunity to really take advantage and to push forward. And of course, there's very good grant structures up there with Invest NI and what have you as well, to support some of the digitalization projects and sustainability projects that might be on the larger side of things. And I think that's where the likes of Carbon Fit might come in as well, because that's what they specialize in terms of looking at what grants are available to what you might be trying to achieve. And then we would be part of that story in terms of the electromechanical upgrades that are needed to be part of that overall strategy.
Thanks for that. Our investment agency, there is a new focus. It's not necessarily about creating jobs, but it's actually about creating decarbonized and productive industries. So we should see more from Invest NI and others in terms of actually assisting firms to invest in things like this, which is obviously got a real simple and appreciable positive impact on certainly on the energy bill and the CO2. A question here from a viewer. Can you let us know if you do on-site energy analysis? And if so, can you share your availability to visit our sites in Uri? So we're actually taking bookings online as we speak, Peter. But do you do that energy analysis piece alongside it? Because you talked at the beginning about Reliance as a group of companies now involved in a variety of different solutions for manufacturing businesses, including Reliance Automation.
So in terms of coming on site and evaluating applications and that, yes, absolutely. We're very happy to come on site to any manufacturing environment And once we see the applications, really, it'll determine, and obviously talk to the engineers and the owners of the business, it'll determine really what's needed and what's required, and what the kind of eventual outcome is. And when it comes to the energy evaluation in terms of, what the savings are prior and then after, I mean, typically there's very off-the-shelf type technology available for that.
Oh, there is, yeah. There is, yeah. It's not something like we look, we don't do the analysis, and there's other companies do the analysis that we work very closely with. Okay, so we don't come in and we say, well, at the moment you're spending and we can save you, blah, blah, blah. What we do is we come in and we look at what I spoke about and we say, we can improve these because these are your larger users, right? But we would work in like climate action and carbon fit. We will work very close with all of those. That's what their specialists at. They use us then for more the hardware side of it and the low-hanging fruit.
Just delving into at application level.
Yeah.
Fine, we'll put you in contact. As I said at the beginning, we'll share the slides and recordings and contact details with everybody after the event. Peter and Pat, I want to thank you for your time today. It just seems a no-brainer here that people can have, whenever they're just burning those 10-pound notes, very simple applications to actually keep some of that money back into their business, and particularly at a time when we know from next month the energy bills are going to begin to rise again. The autumn and winter period is always more expensive given the tariff rates. But now that we have that additional those additional costs for the network charges, now is the time to act rather than waiting until later. Thank you both for your time.
And just before we go,
something else, go ahead, Pat.
Yeah, I just want to leave everybody know we have yet to have anybody come back to us to say we didn't get a saving.
Good.
It's never failed,
Good.
So it is a foolproof, very simple step to make to save a lot of money and save your emissions.
Well, that's a great promise to end any recording. If you can do the same in terms of Amazon and every deliveries to my household, it would be much appreciated. But really appreciate both your time this afternoon. We'll share the recording and contact details. And thank you very much for joining us. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.